What
is
would you do
perfect.
if you discovered your mother-in-law
Smile for
was
the
being
camera,
paid to
Elena.
destroy your pregnancy?
Please, Caroline,
My
don't
name is
do
Elena,
this.
and 6 months ago, I watched my
You
husband's
gave
mother
us
pour
quite a
boiling
scare.
soup over my pregnant belly
Are
while
you
his
feeling
mistress
better?
filmed it
Much
for her
better now
private
that you're
collection.
here.
But here's the part that will
Such a
keep you
shame
up
if something
tonight.
were to happen
My
to the
husband was
baby.
on the phone when it happened.
You should be
He
more
heard
careful where you
everything,
step.
every scream, every threat, every
That
laugh.
can't be true. You're just
And the
saying that
woman
to
who
flatter
ordered
me.
the attack, she wasn't just some jealous girlfriend.
No,
She was a
honestly, it was the
billionaire's
highlight
daughter
of
who
the
had done this
evening.
before. 3 times, to
Yes,
3 different
I need
women.
an ambulance at
And
the
she always
residence
got away with it.
immediately.
Until me.
It appears Elena's
What you're
had
about
a
to hear
terrible
isn't
fall
fiction.
downstairs.
This is my story. A story of betrayal so deep it came from inside my own family. A conspiracy so twisted it involved fake evidence, drugged drinks, and a $50,000 bounty sauce on my unborn child. But I survived. And the ending? Let's just say karma has a very dark sense of humor. Stay with me until the end, because the person who betrayed me the most, you will never see it coming. They say a mother's love is unconditional. But what happens when your mother-in-law's condition for loving you is your death? My name is Elena Mitchell, and 6 months ago, I watched my husband's mother pour boiling soup over my pregnant belly while his mistress filmed it for her private collection. But here's what they didn't know. I wasn't just some helpless victim waiting to be saved. I spent 15 years in the foster care system. I've survived worse than 2 entitled women who thought money could buy murder. What happened next didn't just destroy them. It exposed a conspiracy that went higher than I ever imagined. And the person who betrayed me the most, you'll never guess. Stay with me, because this story has more twists than a mountain road. And I promise you, the ending will restore your faith that karma doesn't just exist. Sometimes karma has a sense of humor. Let me take you back to the beginning, to when my life was actually beautiful. I met Daniel Mitchell in the emergency room 3 years ago. Not exactly romantic, right? He'd been in a car accident, nothing serious, just a fender bender that left him with a gash on his forehead that needed stitches. I was the nurse on duty. Most patients are difficult when they're in pain. They snap at you, demand things, act like you're personally responsible for their suffering. Daniel was different. Even with blood dripping down his face, he apologized for being a bother. He asked me about my day. He made a joke about how his mother always said his hard head would get him in trouble someday. I laughed, he smiled, and something shifted in the universe. We started dating 2 months later. He sent flowers to the hospital with a note that said, "I promise I won't get into any more accidents just to see you, but I had to find some excuse." It was cheesy. It was perfect. It was everything I never knew I wanted. You have to understand something about me. I grew up in the foster care system. 15 years of being shuffled from house to house, never belonging anywhere, never being anyone's first choice. By the time I aged out at 18, I had learned one crucial lesson. Don't trust anyone completely. Don't let anyone get too close. Because everyone leaves eventually. But Daniel made me want to break my own rules. He was patient with my walls. When I flinched away from affection, he didn't push. When I tested him with distance, he stayed. When I finally told him about my childhood, about the foster homes and the loneliness and the feeling of being fundamentally unlovable, he held my hands and said the words that changed everything. "Elena, you're not unlovable. You just haven't been loved properly yet. Let me show you how it's supposed to feel." We got married a year later in a small ceremony at the courthouse. I didn't have family to invite, and Daniel said he didn't need a big wedding. He just needed me. His mother, Carolyn, was the only family present. I should have paid attention to her face during the ceremony. She didn't cry when we exchanged vows. She didn't smile when Daniel said I do. She sat there with her hands folded in her lap, watching me like I was a puzzle she was trying to solve. The tears came later, after the ceremony, when Daniel hugged her and called me his family now. That's when Caroline cried. And even then, something about those tears felt wrong. They weren't happy tears. They were the tears of someone who had just lost something precious. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself she just needed time to adjust. After all, I knew better than anyone how hard it was to let new people in. Looking back now, I should have trusted my instincts. The foster care system taught me to read people, to sense danger before it announced itself. But I was so desperate for the family I never had that I ignored every warning sign. The first year of marriage was perfect. Daniel worked as an architect at a prestigious firm called Harrison and Associates, and he was climbing the ladder fast. I continued working as an ER nurse, loving the chaos and the purpose of saving lives. We bought a small house in the suburbs, painted the nursery yellow before we were even trying for a baby, and talked about our future like it was a gift we couldn't wait to unwrap. Carolyn visited every Sunday for dinner. Daniel insisted on it, said it was important to stay close to family. I agreed, wanting to build the connections I never had as a child. But those dinners became something I dreaded. The comments started small. Carolyn would look at the food I prepared and say things like, "Oh, that's an interesting way to make pot roast. My recipe is different, but I'm sure this is fine." Or she'd examine our house and mention how Daniel's ex-girlfriend, some woman named Amanda, had such wonderful taste in decorating. Daniel never seemed to notice. Or maybe he didn't want to notice. He'd change the subject or laugh it off, and I'd tell myself I was being too sensitive. Then came the pregnancy. I found out on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks before our second anniversary. I took 4 tests just to be sure, then sat on the bathroom floor and cried. Happy tears, terrified tears, the tears of a woman who never thought she'd have a family of her own and suddenly had everything she ever wanted. When Daniel came home from work, I showed him the positive test. He stared at it for a full 30 seconds, then literally picked me up and spun me around while tears streamed down his face. "We're going to be parents," he kept saying. "Elena, we're going to be a family." That night, he talked to my belly for the first time. The baby was barely the size of a sesame seed, but Daniel told it stories about how its mama was the strongest woman he'd ever met, how it was going to be so loved, how we'd been waiting for it our whole lives. I remember lying there in the dark, Daniel's hand on my stomach, thinking that this was what happiness felt like. Pure, uncomplicated happiness. The kind I'd only read about in books. I should have known it couldn't last. We told Caroline the next Sunday. Daniel was practically bouncing with excitement as we sat down for dinner. He couldn't even wait for the food to be served before blurting out, "Mom, we have news. Elena's pregnant. You're going to be a grandmother." The silence that followed lasted only a second, but I felt it stretch into eternity. Caroline's face went through a series of expressions, too fast for Daniel to catch, but slow enough for me to read every single one. Shock, then calculation, then something that looked almost like fear. And finally a smile so forced it made my skin crawl. "How wonderful," she said. "Congratulations." But her eyes were on me, not on Daniel. And what I saw in them wasn't congratulations. It was threat. That night, when Daniel walked her to her car, I heard her voice through the open window. "How convenient," she said. "Now you can never leave her." Daniel's response was sharp. "Mom, stop. I love Elena. The baby is a blessing." "I just want what's best for you, sweetheart. You could have had anyone. Amanda came from such a good family, and now you're tied to this woman who came from nothing." The front door opened before I could hear Daniel's response. He came in looking tired, and when I asked if everything was okay, he just kissed my forehead and said his mother was processing the news. Processing, that's what he called it. I call it the beginning of the end. The first time my mother-in-law threatened to kill my baby, I was 5 months pregnant and completely alone. Daniel had left for work that morning with his usual routine. Coffee, kiss, hand on my growing belly to say good morning to our daughter, then out the door with promises to call during his lunch break. We just found out the gender the week before. A girl. We were going to name her Hope. I was in the kitchen making breakfast when I heard the front door open. Carolyn had a key, Daniel's idea, in case of emergencies. But there was no emergency that morning. Just my mother-in-law standing in my doorway with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Good morning, dear," she said. "I thought I'd stop by and help you with some things around the house. You shouldn't be straining yourself in your condition." I didn't want her there. Every instinct I had screamed at me to ask her to leave, but I heard Daniel's voice in my head, telling me to give her a chance, to understand that she was just adjusting to sharing him with someone else. So I smiled and offered her coffee and tried to be the bigger person. For the first hour, things seemed almost normal. Carolyn helped me fold laundry. She asked about the nursery. She even complimented the yellow paint Daniel and I had chosen, saying it was gender neutral and modern. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and something in her expression changed. It was subtle, the kind of shift you'd miss if you weren't watching for it. But I was always watching Caroline. I'd learned to. "Elena," she said, putting her phone away, "can I be honest with you?" I nodded, bracing myself for another passive-aggressive comment about my cooking or my background or my failure to measure up to the mythical Amanda. But what came next was so much worse. "I know what you are," Caroline said, her voice dropping to something cold and hard. "I know you trapped my son with this pregnancy. I know you saw a successful man and decided to lock him down before he realized he could do better." I tried to respond, tried to defend myself, but she kept talking. "Daniel is my only child. I sacrificed everything for him. Everything. And I will not watch some foster care reject ruin his life." The words hit like physical blows. Foster care reject. I hadn't heard that phrase since high school, since the kids who knew about my background used it to remind me that I was different, less than, unwanted. "Caroline," I managed, "I love Daniel. This baby was planned. We wanted this." She laughed, not a real laugh, something harsh and ugly that transformed her face into something I didn't recognize. "Love," she repeated. "You don't know anything about love. But let me tell you what I know. If you don't disappear from my son's life, if you insist on having this baby and chaining Daniel to you forever, I will make sure you regret it." I stood up from the couch, my hand instinctively going to my belly. "You need to leave." Caroline stood too, stepping closer until we were face to face. She was smaller than me, but in that moment, she felt enormous, terrifying. "Listen to me very carefully," she whispered. "I've worked too hard for too long to lose my son to someone like you. If you tell Daniel about this conversation, I'll deny it. Who do you think he'll believe? His mother, who raised him, sacrificed for him, loved him for 35 years? Or the woman he's known for 3? She paused, letting that sink in. "And if you don't leave on your own," she continued, "I'll help you leave. Maybe you'll have an accident. Pregnant women fall down stairs all the time. Maybe there will be something in your food that doesn't agree with the baby. Maybe you'll just become so anxious and paranoid that Daniel realizes you're mentally unfit to be a mother." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. This woman was standing in my house, threatening my unborn child, and she was doing it with the calm assurance of someone who knew she could get away with it. "You're crazy," I whispered. Carolyn smiled. "Maybe, but I'm also patient, and I always get what I want." She left without another word, closing the door gently behind her like she'd just finished a pleasant visit. I stood in the living room for what felt like hours, shaking, my mind racing through options that all led to dead ends. If I told Daniel, Caroline would deny it. She was right about who he'd believe. His mother, who had raised him alone after his father died, who had worked 2 jobs to put him through school, who had been the center of his world for his entire life. Or me. The woman with no family, no backup, no one to corroborate my story. That night, Daniel came home with flowers and takeout from my favorite restaurant. He was excited about a new project at work, something with the boss's daughter that could lead to a promotion. He talked about the future, about college funds and family vacations and growing old together. I smiled and nodded and said all the right things, but inside I was drowning. The abuse escalated slowly after that. Caroline was smart. She never did anything when there was a chance Daniel might find out. She'd visit during the day when he was at work, always with an excuse, bringing groceries, dropping off baby clothes, just wanting to check on her future grandchild. Each visit brought new torment. She'd bump into me in ways that seemed accidental, causing me to stumble or grab for support. Once, at the top of the stairs, she placed her hand on my back and said, "These stairs are so dangerous. You should be more careful." The implication was clear. She threw away food I'd prepared, claiming it smelled spoiled. She hid my prenatal vitamins. She turned up the air conditioning until I was shivering, then acted innocent when Daniel came home. "I thought pregnant women were always hot," she'd say with that fake, concerned smile. I was just trying to help. The worst part was the isolation. I couldn't tell Daniel. I couldn't tell anyone, really. What would I say? "My mother-in-law is making passive-aggressive comments, and I think she wants to hurt my baby?" It sounded paranoid even to me. But I knew, deep in my bones, I knew that Caroline Mitchell wanted me gone, and she didn't care if my baby went with me. Here's something I learned in foster care, something I want you to remember if you're ever in a situation like mine. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. Don't make excuses for them, so don't tell yourself you misunderstood. Don't wait for them to prove it again and again until the proof almost kills you. I made that mistake. I kept hoping I was wrong about Caroline, kept hoping Daniel would see the truth, kept hoping that somehow love would be enough to protect me. It wasn't. The first time I met Jessica Harrison, she was wearing a white dress that probably cost more than my monthly salary, and she had her hand on my husband's arm. It was a company party, one of those fancy events where architects mingled with clients and everyone pretended to enjoy the champagne. I was 6 months pregnant by then, enormous and uncomfortable, but Daniel had insisted I come. He wanted to show off his beautiful wife, he said. He wanted his colleagues to see how happy we were. I spotted them across the room. Daniel was laughing at something she'd said. His head tilted back, his eyes crinkled in that way I loved. And she was leaning in, her manicured fingers resting on his forearm like they belonged there. My best friend Maya appeared at my elbow with a glass of sparkling cider. She was a divorce attorney I'd known since we were 10 years old in the same foster home. The only person from that life I still talk to. The only person who knew the old me, the scared and scrappy survivor who didn't trust anyone. That woman, Maya said, nodding toward Jessica, just looked at your husband like he was a yacht she wanted to buy. I laughed nervously. He's not for sale. Maya didn't laugh back. Honey, women like that don't understand the word no. They just see it as a negotiation. I walked over to them and Daniel lit up when he saw me. Elena, babe, come here. This is Jessica Harrison. She's working on the Morrison project with me. Jessica turned and up close she was even more stunning. Perfect bone structure, perfect teeth, perfect everything. The kind of beauty that comes from unlimited money and unlimited confidence. So you're the wife, she said, extending her hand. Her handshake was firm, professional, but her eyes told a different story. They traveled over me slowly, assessing, dismissing. It's nice to meet you, I said. Daniel talks about the project constantly. Does he? Jessica smiled. Well, we do spend a lot of time together, long hours, working dinners. Your husband is very dedicated. There was something in the way she said it, a subtle emphasis on the word dedicated, a message meant only for me. I understood immediately. This woman wanted my husband, and she wasn't planning to let something as inconvenient as a wife and baby stand in her way. I want to tell you that I confronted her right there, that I marked my territory and made it clear that Daniel was mine. But the truth is, I was exhausted. Exhausted from Caroline's constant attacks, from the fear that never quite left me, from carrying a baby while fighting a war no one else could see. So I smiled and made small talk and counted the minutes until we could leave. In the car on the way home, I asked Daniel about her. Jessica? She's intense, Reed said. Her father owns the company, so she's used to getting what she wants. But she's smart, good at her job. She seems interested in more than the job. Daniel glanced at me, surprised. What? No, babe, she's just friendly. It's networking. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust that my husband could see what I saw, that he would protect our family from women like Jessica Harrison. But I knew better because I'd seen the way she looked at him, and I'd seen the way she looked at me. Like I was a problem she was already calculating how to solve. The texts started a week later. Daniel showed them to me, wanting to be transparent. Jessica sending work questions at odd hours. Jessica asking him to grab coffee to discuss the project. Jessica suggesting they work late at her place where it was quieter. Daniel turned down the personal invitations, but the work ones were harder to avoid. She was the boss's daughter. Offending her could end his career. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't find out until much later, was that Jessica was already in contact with Caroline. They'd found each other somehow, these two women who wanted me gone. United by greed on Caroline's side and obsession on Jessica's, they'd started building a plan, and I was walking right into it. The breaking point came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was alone in the house, Daniel at work, when Caroline arrived with someone I didn't expect. Jessica Harrison was standing on my doorstep, smiling like we were old friends. "I hope you don't mind," Caroline said brightly. "I ran into Jessica at the grocery store and mentioned I was coming to see you. She wanted to say hello." I knew it was a lie. I knew this was planned, but what could I say? I stepped aside and let them in. For the next 2 hours, I endured the most sophisticated torture I'd ever experienced. They took turns, Caroline and Jessica, playing good cop, bad cop in a performance so seamless it had to be rehearsed. "You must be so tired," Jessica would say with fake sympathy when pregnancy is so hard, and Daniel works such long hours, it must be lonely. "I worry about her," Carolyn would add. "She doesn't have any family, you know. No one to help when the baby comes." "That's so sad. I can't imagine going through childbirth without my mother there." "Well, not everyone is as fortunate as you, dear." Back and forth, back and forth. Each comment designed to remind me of my isolation, my vulnerability, my fundamental aloneness in the world. When they finally left, Jessica paused at the door. She turned back to me with a smile that made my blood run cold. "You know," she said, "I really admire what you and Daniel have built. But I've found that nothing lasts forever. People grow apart. Circumstances change. And sometimes the kindest thing a woman can do is step aside and let everyone find their true happiness." She walked away before I could respond. That night, I made a decision. I would document everything. Every comment, every threat, every suspicious behavior. I would build a case, piece by piece, until I had something concrete to show Daniel. I started a hidden folder on my phone, typed out descriptions of each incident with dates and times, took photos of bruises from Caroline's accidental bumps, saved every strange text from Jessica. I was fighting back. Finally, I was fighting back. But I had no idea how badly I'd underestimated my enemies. They weren't just cruel, they were calculating, and they were about to teach me just how outmatched I really was. The stairs happened on a Sunday afternoon. Carolyn had been unusually kind that week, bringing me herbal tea, offering to help decorate the nursery, complimenting my pregnancy glow. After months of torment, her sudden sweetness felt like relief, but I should have known better. When an enemy suddenly becomes friendly, they're not changing, they're positioning. That's the first lesson I want you to take from my story. Trust the pattern, not the exception. Daniel was at a work emergency, something about blueprints that needed immediate revision. He'd apologized profusely, promised to be back by dinner, and left me alone with his mother. "Let me help you bring those boxes upstairs," Carolyn offered. She was pointing to a stack of baby supplies we'd ordered, still sitting in the foyer. "You shouldn't be lifting anything heavy." I hesitated. Every instinct screamed at me to refuse, but she'd been so nice lately. And maybe I'd been wrong about her. Maybe she was finally accepting me. So I let her help. We each took a box and headed up the stairs. Halfway up, Caroline suddenly stopped. "Oh, I forgot something in my car," she said. "Wait here, I'll be right back." She turned to go back down, and as she passed me, I felt her hand on my back. Not a push, not exactly, just a placement, a weight, testing. "These stairs are so dangerous," she said, her voice soft and casual. "You really should be more careful." Then she was gone, heading down, and I was standing there with a box in my arms and my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The dizziness came out of nowhere, sudden and overwhelming, like the floor had tilted beneath me. I dropped the box, grabbed for the railing, and missed. I fell. 3 steps, maybe 4, tumbling and spinning and desperately trying to protect my belly with my arms. I landed on the lower platform, the breath knocked out of me, pain shooting through my shoulder and hip. Caroline was there instantly, kneeling beside me, face a mask of concern. "Elena, oh my God, are you okay? What happened?" I couldn't speak, couldn't think. All I could do was press my hands to my stomach and pray. "Don't move," Caroline said, already pulling out her phone. "I'm calling an ambulance." At the hospital, they ran every test imaginable. The baby's heartbeat was there, thank God, but irregular. The doctor's face was serious as she delivered the news. "Your baby is stressed," she said. "The fall didn't cause immediate harm, but your cortisol levels are dangerously high. If this continues, we may need to consider early delivery." Daniel burst in 20 minutes later, frantic with worry. He held my hand while the doctor repeated everything, his face growing paler with each word. When we were finally alone, he exploded. "Why were you carrying boxes?" he demanded. "I've told you 100 times to rest, to let me handle the heavy stuff. What were you thinking?" I opened my mouth to explain, to tell him about Caroline's hand on my back, about the dizziness that came out of nowhere, about all the months of torment I'd been hiding. But before I could speak, the door opened. Caroline walked in with flowers and tears streaming down her face. "Oh, Elena," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I should never have left you alone on those stairs. This is all my fault." Daniel immediately went to her. "Mom, don't blame yourself. It was an accident." "But I was supposed to be watching her. I was just trying to help, and now the baby." Caroline's voice broke. "I'll never forgive myself." She was good. God, she was so good. The concerned mother-in-law, devastated by an accident she couldn't have prevented. Even I almost believed her. "It wasn't your fault," Daniel said firmly. "Elena should have been more careful." He turned to me, and I saw something in his eyes that broke my heart. Not suspicion exactly, but doubt. The beginning of doubt. "Babe, you have to start taking better care of yourself, for Hope's sake." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him everything right there, with Caroline listening. But I looked at his mother's tear-stained face, at her performance so perfect it could win an Oscar. And I knew if I accused her now, I would lose. Daniel would think the stress had made me paranoid. Caroline would play the victim, and whatever small chance I had of being believed would evaporate forever. So I nodded, apologized, promised to be more careful. That night in my hospital bed, I made a new plan. I needed evidence, real evidence, the kind that couldn't be denied or explained away. I needed Maya. She came to see me the next morning, armed with her legal pad and her razor-sharp mind. I told her everything, every threat, every incident, every suspicion I'd been carrying alone for months. When I finished, Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she said the words I desperately needed to hear. "I believe you." 3 words, but they changed everything. "We're going to build a case," Maya continued. "Documentation, evidence, witnesses if we can find them. That woman is going to regret the day she messed with my family." For the first time in months, I felt something other than fear. I felt hope. Maya worked fast. Within a week, she had more information about Caroline Mitchell than I'd gathered in 2 years of marriage. The gambling debt was the first bomb. Caroline owed money, a lot of money, $200,000 to a private casino that catered to wealthy clients who wanted to lose fortunes without witnesses. She'd been hiding it for years, borrowing from one source to pay another, sinking deeper into a hole that had no bottom. "This explains a lot," Maya said when she showed me the documents. "She's desperate. Desperate people do desperate things." But it got worse, much worse. The bank records showed recent deposits into Caroline's account. 50,000 wire transferred from an offshore account. When Maya traced the source, we both went silent. "Harrison Holdings, Jessica's father's company. They're in this together," I whispered. "Caroline and Jessica. They're working together." Maya nodded grimly. "Looks like Ms. Harrison is paying your mother-in-law to get rid of you. The question is, what's the end game?" I knew the answer to that. They wanted me gone. Whether I left on my own, lost the baby, or something worse, they wanted Daniel free and unattached, ready to be claimed by the billionaire's daughter who couldn't accept the word no. "We need to catch them," I said. "We need proof of what they're planning." Maya smiled. It was the kind of smile that made opposing attorneys nervous in depositions. "I have an idea." The camera was small, designed to look like an ordinary smoke detector. Maya had connections from her divorce cases, people who specialized in catching cheating spouses and abusive partners. The device would stream directly to a secure server, creating a real-time record that couldn't be deleted or tampered with. "Hide this somewhere Caroline won't think to look," Maya instructed. "Let her think she's safe. Let her incriminate herself." I installed it in the living room the next day, right above the couch where Caroline loved to sit during her visits. It felt like taking back control, like finally having a weapon in a war I'd been fighting with my bare hands. The footage we captured over the next 2 weeks was damning. Caroline threatening me when Daniel was at work. If you know what's good for you and that baby, you'll disappear. Take your settlement and go. Caroline on the phone with someone I couldn't see. She's stubborn, but she'll break. They all break eventually. Caroline going through our documents, photographing bank statements and legal papers. I finally had proof, real, undeniable proof that my mother-in-law was conspiring against me. I organized everything into a folder, practiced my presentation, and prepared to show Daniel the truth about his mother. For one brief, beautiful moment, I thought I'd won. I should have known better. The night I planned to tell Daniel everything, he came home late. And he wasn't alone. Carolyn was with him. So was Jessica Harrison. "What's going on?" I asked, my hand instinctively moving to my belly. Daniel's face was strange, closed off in a way I'd never seen before. "Elena, we need to talk." "Happy intervention," Caroline sang, her voice bright and brittle. Jessica was holding a folder, thick, professional, expensive looking. She handed it to Daniel with a sympathetic smile that made my stomach turn. "I'm so sorry you have to see this," she said. "But you deserve to know the truth about the woman you married." Inside the folder was my destruction, laid out in neat professional pages. A psychological evaluation I'd never taken, declaring me mentally unstable with paranoid tendencies. A fake background check showing a criminal history I didn't have. Financial records doctored to make it look like I'd been planning to divorce Daniel and take half his assets. And worst of all, testimony from people claiming to be from my past. Foster siblings I didn't remember, saying I'd always been manipulative, always been a liar, always been exactly the kind of person who would trap a successful man with a pregnancy. "This is fake," I said, my voice shaking. "Daniel, none of this is true. They're lying." Daniel didn't look at me. He was staring at the papers, his jaw tight, his hands trembling. "The evidence is compelling," Jessica said softly. "I know this is hard to accept, but Elena isn't who you think she is." "I tried to warn you," Carolyn added, tears in her eyes. "From the very beginning, I knew something was wrong. A mother always knows." I couldn't breathe. The room was spinning. My carefully gathered evidence, my folder full of proof, was sitting in my bag by the door. But suddenly it felt pathetic. My grainy camera footage against their professional documents. My word against the combined testimony of his mother and his boss's daughter. "Daniel," I tried again, "please, look at me." He finally raised his eyes, and what I saw there shattered me. Doubt, real doubt. The man who had promised to love me forever was looking at me like he didn't know who I was. "I think you should stay with Maya for a few days," he said, "until we figure out what's true." "You're kicking me out? I'm 7 months pregnant with your daughter." "I'm not kicking you out." His voice was strained. "I'm asking for space, to process." I looked at Caroline, at her triumphant smile barely hidden behind her fake tears. I looked at Jessica, at the satisfaction gleaming in her eyes. They had won. They had actually won. Maya picked me up an hour later. I was still in shock, clutching my useless folder of evidence, my body numb except for the constant flutter of hope's kicks against my ribs. "Tell me everything," Maya said. I did. Every detail of the intervention, every page of their fake documentation, every word that had come out of Daniel's mouth. When I finished, Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked a question that hit me like a physical blow. "Where's your camera footage? The stuff from the smoke detector?" I grabbed my phone, pulled up the app. The storage was empty. Every file, every recording, every piece of evidence we'd gathered. Gone. Someone had accessed my account and deleted everything. I stared at the blank screen, and for the first time in this whole nightmare, I felt truly hopeless. They hadn't just beaten me. They had erased me. "The family laptop," I whispered. "I used our shared laptop to set up the account. Daniel has all my passwords." Which meant Caroline had them now, too. Maya pulled into her parking garage and turned off the car. She sat there for a moment, both hands on the steering wheel. "Okay," she finally said. "So they're smart. So they have money and resources and a head start. So what? I've taken down smarter opponents than these two. Maya, it's over. I have nothing. You have me. She turned to face me, and her eyes were fierce. You have a brain and survival instincts and 15 years of experience dealing with people who wanted to destroy you. You made it through the foster system. You put yourself through nursing school. You built a life from nothing. And you're going to let two spoiled women take it all away? I felt something stir in my chest, something that wasn't quite hope, but was maybe its distant cousin. What do we do? Maya smiled, that dangerous smile. We fight smarter. 3 days later, Daniel called. I was at Maya's apartment, on bed rest per the doctor's orders. My stress levels were through the roof, and the baby was feeling every moment of it. Irregular heartbeat, decreased movement, all the signs of a child who knew her mother was falling apart. Elena. Daniel's voice was different, smaller somehow, uncertain. I need to see you. Something doesn't add up. Maya was listening on speaker. She nodded slowly. Meet me somewhere public, I said. The coffee shop on 5th Street. Maya will be there. That's fair. I understand. He paused. Elena, I think I made a terrible mistake. We met the next morning. Daniel looked awful. Dark circles under his eyes, stubble on his jaw, clothes wrinkled like he'd slept in them. He sat across from me at the tiny table, hands wrapped around a coffee cup he wasn't drinking. I found something, he said quietly. After you left, I couldn't sleep, so I started going through Mom's things, looking for, I don't know, proof that I wasn't wrong about her. I waited. There was a burner phone in her purse, hidden in a side pocket. I almost missed it. He pulled out his own phone and showed me photos of text messages. These are between her and Jessica. They've been talking for months. I looked at the screenshots, planning, coordination, timelines, the word target appearing multiple times. They're working together, Daniel continued. Everything they showed me at the intervention. It was planned, fabricated. They set you up. I know, I said. His eyes met mine, filled with shame. You tried to tell me. So many times, and I didn't listen. No, you didn't. I'm so sorry. His voice broke. Elena, I'm so sorry. I was blind. I thought I knew my mother, thought I understood her. But this person, this woman who would hurt my wife, threatened my child. He shook his head. This isn't the mother I knew. Part of me wanted to scream at him, to make him feel every moment of fear and isolation I'd experienced, while he defended the woman trying to destroy me. But a bigger part remembered something important. Daniel had been manipulated too. Not the same way as me, but manipulated nonetheless. Caroline had spent 35 years building herself into the center of his world. Breaking free from that wasn't simple. What do you want to do? I asked. I want to help you stop them, whatever it takes. He leaned forward, urgent. I can be on the inside. Mom and Jessica think they have won. They trust me. I can gather evidence, record conversations, find out what they're really planning. Maya spoke up from the next table. And why should we trust you? You abandoned your pregnant wife based on forged documents. Daniel flinched. You're right, I did. And I'll spend the rest of my life making up for it. But right now, I'm your best chance. They don't know I've found the phone. I do not know I suspect anything. I can get access that you can't. I looked at Maya. She raised an eyebrow, letting me make the call. One chance, I finally said. You get one chance, and if you betray me again, there won't be a third. I won't, I swear on our daughter's life. For the next week, Daniel played his part perfectly. He pretended to be distant from me, conflicted, manipulable. He had dinner with Caroline and reported back. He met with Jessica under the guise of working late and recorded their conversations. The evidence he gathered was explosive. Jessica talking about previous women. I've done this before, you know. There was a teacher in Boston, a nurse in Chicago. They all fought at first. They all lost in the end. Carolyn discussing the money. 50,000 is just the beginning. Once he's free of her, you promised 200,000 more. That was our deal. And most chilling of all, the two of them planning what they called the final solution. It needs to happen soon, Jessica said on one recording, before the baby comes. It's much easier to separate a man from a pregnant girlfriend than a man from his actual child. I have an idea, Carolyn replied. Something that will make her leave on her own or make her unable to stay. Daniel uploaded everything to a secure server. We contacted a detective Maya trusted, a veteran named Raymond Shaw who was months from retirement and had seen everything. He reviewed the evidence and agreed to help. We had them, finally, truly had them, and then Daniel disappeared. The morning of the planned takedown, he was supposed to meet Caroline and Jessica at our house. He'd wear a wire. Police would be waiting outside. As soon as they incriminated themselves, they'd be arrested. But Daniel never showed up. I called him 20 times. Straight to voicemail. Maya called. Nothing. Detective Shaw sent officers to the house. Empty. Then my phone buzzed with an anonymous text. It was a video. Daniel and Jessica together in what was clearly a bedroom. They were intimate, close. The timestamp showed a date from just 3 days ago. The text that followed was simple. Your husband isn't a double agent. He's just an agent. For us. I stared at the screen, and something inside me cracked. All the hope I'd rebuilt, all the trust I'd carefully reconstructed, it shattered like glass. Daniel hadn't come back for me. He'd come back for them. To keep me calm, to keep me in one place, to make sure I didn't run. Maya's face was pale. Elena, we need to get you out of here. If they're planning something today. But before I could respond, her phone rang. She answered, listened, went completely white. What? I asked. That was the State Bar Association. They've received complaints about ethical violations in my practice. I'm required to report for questioning immediately. That's a setup. Of course it's a setup. But if I don't go, they'll issue a warrant. I'll be disbarred. Maya's hands were shaking. Elena, Jessica's father owns half the judges in this city. This is them removing me from your side. 2 men in suits arrived at the door before she could say more. They had badges, official paperwork. Maya had no choice. I'll be back as soon as I can, she promised, hugging me carefully around my belly. Stay here. Lock the door. Don't let anyone in. I watched her leave with the men, and I knew I was completely alone. That's when I heard a car pull up outside. I moved to the window, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my temples. A black SUV sat in Maya's parking lot. The doors opened, and 2 figures stepped out. Caroline Mitchell and Jessica Harrison. They weren't supposed to know where I was staying, but of course they did. They'd been 10 steps ahead of me this entire time. I backed away from the window, grabbed my phone, tried to call 911. No signal. They'd done something to block it. Of course they had. The knock on the door was almost polite. Elena, Carolyn's voice, sing-song and sweet. We know you're in there. We just want to talk. I looked around desperately for another exit. Maya's apartment was on the 3rd floor. Fire escape. But I was 7 months pregnant. In my condition, I'd be lucky to make it down 1 flight of stairs without falling. The knocking became pounding. Elena, don't be difficult. This is already over. Come out and we can discuss terms. Terms. Like this was a business negotiation. Like they weren't here to hurt me. I grabbed a kitchen knife, the biggest one I could find, positioned myself behind the couch, tried to control my breathing. The lock clicked. They had a key. Of course they did. Jessica Harrison could buy anything, including copies of keys from apartment building managers. The door swung open. Carolyn entered first, her face a mask of motherly concern that I now recognized as pure predation. Jessica followed, phone in hand, already recording. There she is, Jessica said brightly. The woman who just won't quit. Where's Daniel? My voice came out stronger than I felt. Caroline laughed. Oh, honey, Daniel is exactly where we need him to be. The video you sent. Real, unfortunately for you. Jessica circled around the couch, her movements slow and deliberate. Your husband has been enjoying my company for weeks now. The reconciliation? That was my idea. Keep you docile while we finalized our plans. I felt sick, betrayed on a level so deep it seemed to reach my bones. Wait, I managed, but what did I ever do to you? You existed. Jessica's voice went cold. You took something I wanted. No one takes things from me, Elena. I always get what I want. And you? I turned to Carolyn. He's your son. This baby's your granddaughter. How can I what? Protect my son from a gold digger who trapped him? Carolyn's mask slipped, revealing the hatred beneath. I sacrificed everything for Daniel. Everything. And then you came along, and suddenly I'm not important anymore. Suddenly he's building a family with you instead of taking care of me. He was still your son. He still loved you. Love, she spat the word. Love doesn't pay gambling debts. Love doesn't secure my future. Jessica offered me a chance to fix everything, to get my son back and be financially secure for the rest of my life. By killing your grandchild. By removing an obstacle. The words hung in the air, stripped of all pretense. This was it. The truth of what I was facing. I gripped the knife tighter. I won't let you hurt my baby. Carolyn actually smiled. Elena, dear, you don't have a choice. Jessica moved suddenly, lunging toward me. I swung the knife, but my pregnant body was slow, awkward. She grabbed my wrist, twisted, and the knife clattered to the floor. Carolyn was there instantly, wrapping her arms around me from behind, pinning my arms to my sides. I struggled, kicked, tried to scream, but Jessica clamped her hand over my mouth. Shh, she whispered. This will all be over soon. I bit her hand, hard. She jerked back with a yelp, and I used the moment to break free from Caroline's grip. Stumbled toward the door, but Jessica was faster. She grabbed a pot from Maya's stove, something that had been simmering on low. I hadn't even noticed it when they came in. They'd prepared this. They'd planned for everything. I could see the steam rising from the pot as she lifted it. Please, I begged, my hands going to my belly. Please don't hurt my baby. I'll leave. I'll disappear. Just please. Caroline grabbed me again, holding me in place. This time her grip was iron. Goodbye, nobody, Jessica whispered. And then the pain came, boiling liquid hitting my arms, my stomach, my legs. The kind of pain that exists beyond screaming, beyond thinking, beyond everything except the desperate animal need to survive. My skin was burning, blistering, and somewhere beneath the agony, I could feel hope moving frantically, my baby girl fighting for life inside my ruined body. I collapsed. The world went gray at the edges. Through the haze, I heard Jessica laughing, saw her crouching down with her phone, recording my agony like it was entertainment. Perfect, she was saying. This is perfect. Carolyn was standing over me, breathing hard. If you survive this, you'll leave on your own. No one will want you looking like this. You're finished, Elena. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, but I could feel something, a vibration in the floor, growing stronger. Footsteps, running. The door exploded inward. Detective Raymond Shaw stood in the doorway, gun drawn, 2 officers behind him. His face went through shock, horror, and fury in the space of a heartbeat. Hands up, both of you, now! Carolyn went white. Jessica dropped her phone, her confident smile finally cracking. This isn't what it looks like, Jessica started. She attacked us. But Shaw wasn't looking at them anymore. He was looking at the ceiling, at the smoke detector that Maya had hardwired to a secure police server before the apartment building was even completed. A second camera, a backup plan, because foster kids, we always have backup plans. We've been watching the whole time, Shaw said quietly. Multiple officers witnessed everything in real time. You're under arrest for attempted murder. The last thing I remember before the paramedics arrived is Caroline's face. Not guilty, not scared, just surprised. Like she genuinely couldn't believe her plan hadn't worked. And then darkness took me, and hope's kicks grew weak against my burned and broken body. I woke up in the hospital to the sound of my daughter's heartbeat. The monitor beside my bed showed her rhythm, steady and strong despite everything. The doctors later told me it was a miracle. The burns had been severe, 2nd and 3rd degree, over 30% of my body. Emergency surgery had been required to ensure Hope's survival. They'd prepared for the worst. But my baby girl was a fighter. She got that from me. Daniel was there when I opened my eyes. He looked like he'd aged 10 years since I last saw him. There were bandages on his arms, an IV in his wrist. Hey, he said softly. You're awake. I tried to speak. Couldn't. Don't try to talk yet. He moved closer, careful not to touch my injured skin. The doctor said you need rest. But I had to see you. I had to explain. I must have looked confused because he started talking faster, words tumbling out like he'd been holding them in for days. The video Jessica sent you, it was real, but it wasn't what you think. She'd been drugging me, Elena. Same stuff they use in date rape cases. I didn't know until I woke up in the hospital. I remember the text. Your husband isn't a double agent. I found out Jessica's plan the day of the takedown. The real plan. She wasn't just going to have you arrested or driven away. She was going to... He couldn't finish the sentence. I tried to warn you. I recorded everything, uploaded it to the server before I confronted her. But she had security. They grabbed me before I could get to you. The video, I managed to croak. She filmed us while I was drugged, made it look like I was willing. His voice cracked. Elena, I would never. You have to believe me. You and Hope are everything. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But I'd been betrayed so many times now that trust felt like a foreign language I'd forgotten how to speak. Detective Shaw appeared in the doorway, saving me from having to respond. Mrs. Mitchell, he said, you're awake. Good. We have a lot to discuss. What he told me changed everything. Jessica Harrison had done this before, 3 times. Different women in different cities, all of whom had gotten in the way of something she wanted. The teacher in Boston had been driven to suicide. The nurse in Chicago had lost her children in a custody battle based on fabricated evidence. The journalist in Miami had seen her career destroyed through planted stories. In every case, Shaw explained, Charles Harrison made the problems go away, paid off victims, silenced witnesses, bought judges. He's been covering for his daughter her entire adult life. So Jessica is a serial predator, I said, and her father is her enabler. But here's where it gets bigger. Shaw pulled out a folder. The recordings Daniel uploaded before he was taken. They contain conversations where Charles Harrison discusses financial crimes, fraud, money laundering through his real estate empire. He didn't just protect Jessica. He used her obsessions as distractions from his own illegal activities. The scope of it was staggering. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about an entire family built on manipulation, money, and the belief that enough wealth could buy exemption from consequences. What happens now? I asked. Jessica and Caroline are in custody. We have enough to charge them both with attempted murder, assault, conspiracy. But Charles Harrison is lawyered up. His legal team is already trying to distance him from his daughter's actions. He can't get away with this, Shaw smiled grimly. He won't, because we have something his lawyers didn't expect. The door opened again, and Caroline Mitchell walked in, escorted by officers. She looked smaller than I remembered, older. The triumphant woman who had stood over my burning body was gone, replaced by someone broken and desperate. I want to make a deal, she said, not looking at Daniel. I have information about the Harrison family, things that will bring them down, things that go beyond Jessica. Daniel stood up abruptly. You don't get to bargain your way out of this. You tried to kill my wife, my daughter. I know what I did. For the first time, Caroline's voice held something like remorse. And I know I'm going to wind up buzzing for it. But I can choose who goes down with me. She turned to Shaw. Charles Harrison was using me. I wasn't just helping Jessica get a man. I was being paid to help cover their financial tracks. Money laundering through shell companies. Tax fraud. Securities violations. They needed a fall guy if things went wrong. I was supposed to be the scapegoat. Shaw exchanged a glance with another officer. I have documents, Carolyn continued, account numbers, transaction records, enough to bring down his entire empire. Daniel shook his head in disgust. You're only doing this because you got caught. If your plan had worked, you'd be cashing checks and pretending to be a loving grandmother. Probably based. Caroline's voice was flat. But I got caught, and now I'm facing life in prison while Charles Harrison walks free. So yes, I'm making a deal. Not because it's right, because it's all I have left. I watched this woman, my mother-in-law, the person who had tormented me for months and nearly killed my child. Part of me wanted to see her suffer for everything she'd done, but a bigger part of me just wanted justice. Real justice. The kind that reaches the people at the top, not just the pawns at the bottom. Take her deal, I said to Shaw. Whatever it takes to bring down Charles Harrison, take it. Carolyn looked at me then, really looked, and in her eyes I saw something I never expected. Gratitude. She didn't deserve it. But maybe justice wasn't about what people deserved. Maybe it was about making sure the guilty faced consequences, no matter who they were or how much money they had. The investigation that followed was the biggest financial fraud case the city had seen in decades. Charles Harrison was arrested 2 weeks later, his assets frozen, his empire crumbling around him. The evidence Caroline provided was damning. Account numbers, transaction records, proof that the billionaire had built his fortune on a foundation of lies. But that's getting ahead of myself. First, there was the trial. The courtroom was packed the day Jessica Harrison took the stand. I was there despite the doctor's warnings. Maya sat on one side of me, Daniel on the other. My burns were healing but still visible, red and angry against my skin. I wanted the jury to see them. I wanted everyone to see what these women had done. The prosecutor played the recordings, all of them. The hidden camera footage from Maya's apartment, Daniel's uploads from the server, Caroline's confession about her role in the conspiracy, but the most devastating evidence was Jessica's own words. "I've done this before, you know." Her voice echoed through the courtroom, captured on Daniel's recording. There was a teacher in Boston, a nurse in Chicago. They all fought at first. They all lost in the end. The jury's faces as they listened to that recording. Horror, disgust, the kind of moral outrage that doesn't fade. Jessica's defense tried everything. Claims of mental illness, temporary insanity, even an argument that I had provoked her somehow, that my existence was itself a form of attack. The prosecutor destroyed each excuse methodically. This wasn't passion, she told the jury. This wasn't a moment of madness. This was calculated, premeditated, and systematic. Jessica Harrison identified a target, recruited an accomplice, and executed a plan designed to destroy a pregnant woman's life. She did this not because she was ill, but because she believed her money and privilege made her untouchable. The prosecutor turned to face Jessica directly. "You laughed while Mrs. Mitchell screamed. You photographed her agony like it was entertainment. You stood over her burning body and told her she was finished." Her voice dropped to something cold and final. "You're not sick, Miss Harrison. You're evil." The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Jessica Harrison was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. The judge's words still ring in my ears. "You have demonstrated a pattern of predatory behavior that spans years and multiple victims. You have shown no remorse for your actions and no understanding of the suffering you have caused. Society needs protection from people like you." Caroline's trial was shorter. She'd already made her deal, trading testimony against Charles Harrison for a reduced sentence. She got 12 years. Still significant, still justice. But it was Caroline's statement to the court that surprised me. "I want to say something to my daughter-in-law," she said, turning to face me. "Elena, I don't expect forgiveness. What I did is unforgivable. But I want you to know that I understand now what I destroyed. Not just your body, not just your marriage. I destroyed my own family because I was too selfish to share my son's love." She paused, and for a moment the mask slipped completely. "I spent 61 years believing that love was a limited resource, that if Daniel loved you, there wouldn't be enough left for me. I was wrong, and by the time I realized it, I'd already done something that can never be undone." Daniel's hand tightened on mine. "I hope your daughter never knows what her grandmother tried to do. I hope she grows up knowing nothing but love. And I hope that someday you find peace, because you deserve it, even if I don't." She was escorted from the courtroom without another word. The trial of Charles Harrison was a media circus. Every news outlet in the country covered it. Financial fraud, money laundering, tax evasion, enabling serial criminal behavior. The charges went on for pages. His legal team tried to paint him as an ignorant father who didn't know about his daughter's actions. But the evidence Caroline provided was irrefutable. Bank records, transaction logs, Communications that proved he'd known exactly what Jessica was doing and had actively covered it up. The prosecution also presented testimony from Jessica's previous victims, the families of the woman in Boston who had taken her own life, the nurse in Chicago who had lost custody of her children based on fabricated evidence, the journalist in Miami whose career was destroyed. One by one, they told their stories. And one by one, the jury saw the pattern of destruction that Charles Harrison had enabled for years. He was found guilty on all counts: asset forfeiture, decades of potential prison time. His empire, built on fraud and protected by corruption, finally collapsed. Maya squeezed my hand as the verdict was read. "You did this," she whispered. "You brought down a billionaire." I shook my head. "We did this. Together." But the truth is, I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. So tired. Justice had been served. The guilty were in prison. The conspiracy was exposed. But I still had scars that would never fully heal. I still had nightmares about boiling liquid and Caroline's satisfied smile. I still flinched when someone touched me unexpectedly. Winning doesn't always feel like winning. Sometimes it just feels like surviving. My daughter was born on a Tuesday morning, 2 months after the attack. I'd been terrified throughout the final weeks of pregnancy. Every twinge, every cramp, every moment when hope's kick seemed weaker than usual sent me spiraling into panic. The doctors monitored me constantly. High-risk pregnancy, they called it, as if I needed reminding. But when the moment came, when the contractions started and Daniel rushed me to the hospital, and the hours of labor stretched into what felt like days, something shifted inside me. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was ready. Hope Elena Mitchell came into the world screaming at the top of her lungs, all 7 pounds and 3 ounces of pure determination. The nurses placed her on my chest, her tiny body warm against my scarred skin, and I cried. Not sad tears, not scared tears, tears of pure, overwhelming joy. Daniel was beside me, his hand on my shoulder, tears streaming down his own face. "She's perfect," he whispered. "Elena, she's absolutely perfect." And she was. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a full head of dark hair, and eyes that seemed to look right through you. My daughter, our daughter, the baby girl who had survived a murder attempt while still in my womb. "You're a fighter," I told her softly, "just like your mama." We named her Hope because that's what she represented. Hope that good could triumph over evil. Hope that love was stronger than hate. Hope that even the darkest nights eventually give way to morning. Maya said the name was cliché. I told her some clichés become clichés because they're true. The recovery was slow. Physical therapy to regain mobility in my burned arms. More surgeries to reduce the scarring. Counseling to address the trauma that lived in my bones. Daniel was there for every appointment, every painful session, every moment when I wanted to give up. He'd quit his architecture career after everything came out. Too many connections to the Harrison family, too many reminders of what had happened. Instead, he went back to school for counseling. "I want to help people," he explained one evening, Hope sleeping in his arms. "The way I should have helped you from the beginning." I didn't fully trust him yet. Maybe I never would completely. The memory of that video, of believing he'd betrayed me, still lingered like a bruise that wouldn't fade. But I was learning to let him earn my trust back, day by day, action by action. That's the thing about rebuilding. It takes longer than breaking, but it's worth it. Maya and I started the Phoenix Fund 6 months after Hope was born, a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping pregnant women in dangerous situations. We provide legal assistance, documentation support, safe housing, and most importantly, belief. Because I remember what it felt like to have no one believe me, to be called paranoid, hormonal, crazy, to be told that my fears were products of pregnancy and stress while I was being systematically destroyed. No one should ever feel that alone. The scars on my body are permanent. I'll carry them for the rest of my life. The skin grafts help, but there's only so much medicine can do. Some days I hate them. I catch sight of myself in the mirror and remember the feeling of burning, and I have to sit down and breathe through the panic. But other days, I see something different. I see proof that I served. I see evidence that I protected my daughter. I see badges of honor earned in a war I never asked to fight. My therapist calls it post-traumatic growth. The idea that suffering can transform us, not just damage us. That we can emerge from our worst experiences stronger, wiser, more compassionate than before. I'm not sure I believe that completely, but I believe in hope. I believe in the foundation Maya and I built. I believe in the women we've helped escape situations that could have killed them. And I believe that my story, as painful as it is to tell, might help someone else survive theirs. Here's what I want you to take from everything I've shared. If someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. Don't wait for more proof. Don't make excuses. Don't hope they'll change. Document everything. Dates, times, exact words. Back up your evidence in multiple places. Physical copies matter as much as digital ones. Build your network before you need it. One trusted friend, one person who believes you without question, can make the difference between survival and destruction. And never, ever let anyone convince you that you're too small to fight back. Jessica Harrison grew up believing money could buy anything. Caroline Mitchell thought her son's loyalty would protect her forever. Charles Harrison built an empire on the assumption that wealth meant invincibility. They were all wrong. The powerful aren't untouchable. They just want you to think they are. Maya still comes over for dinner every week. She brings wine for herself and watches hope with the expression of someone who's seen too much of the world's darkness and is grateful for its occasional light. That kid is going to be smarter than both of us, she says regularly. She's already got that judgmental look. She gets that from me, obviously. Daniel and I are finding our way back to each other. Some days are harder than others. Trust, once broken, doesn't rebuild overnight. But he shows up. Every day he shows up. He changes diapers and cooks dinner and holds me when the nightmares come. Actions over words. That's what matters now. Caroline writes letters from prison. Daniel burns them without reading. He says she stopped being his mother the day she chose money over his family. I don't argue with him, but sometimes I wonder if she's changed. If 12 years in a cell has taught her anything about the love she threw away. Probably not, but I hope so, for her sake, not mine. Jessica doesn't write. Her lawyers tried to appeal the conviction, citing new evidence and procedural errors. The appeal was denied. She'll be in prison until she's nearly 50 years old. By then, the world will have forgotten her. The money, the beauty, the privilege that once made her feel untouchable will be distant memories. Sometimes I think about visiting her, sitting across from her in a prison visiting room and asking the question that still haunts me. Why? But I know the answer wouldn't satisfy me. There is no answer that could explain choosing to destroy another person's life simply because you wanted something that wasn't yours to take. Evil doesn't always make sense. Sometimes it just exists. Charles Harrison died of a heart attack in prison 2 months after his conviction. Some people said it was karma. Others said it was too easy an ending for a man who had caused so much suffering. I didn't feel anything when I heard the news. No satisfaction, no relief, no closure, just emptiness. He was gone and the world kept turning, and my scars remained exactly the same. That's the thing about justice. It doesn't heal you. It just means the people who hurt you can't hurt anyone else. Hope took her first steps last week. 14 months old and already determined to explore every corner of our home. Daniel cried. I cried. Maya pretended she wasn't crying while filming the whole thing on her phone. My daughter doesn't know yet what happened before she was born. Doesn't understand why Mama has scars or why she'll never meet her paternal grandmother. Someday we'll tell her, when she's old enough to understand. We'll tell her that she's a miracle, that she survived something no baby should ever have to survive, that her very existence is proof that love is stronger than hate. But for now, she's just a toddler, taking wobbly steps across the living room floor, giggling as she goes, completely unaware of the darkness she emerged from. And maybe that's the real victory. Not the trials or the convictions or the headlines. Just this. A baby who should have died, thriving. A family that should have shattered, healing. A woman who was told she was finished, still standing. If you're going through something like what I experienced, I want you to know that the night is darkest just before dawn. That sounds like a cliche, I know, but I've lived it. I've stood in the darkness so complete I couldn't see my own hands. And I've watched the sun rise. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for standing with survivors. Thank you for believing that speaking your truth is the most powerful weapon you have. I'm Elena Mitchell, and against all odds, I'm still here. There's one more thing I should tell you. Last week, a letter arrived at our house, no return address. Just my name and handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 3 words. See you soon. I showed it to Detective Shaw. He's investigating. The handwriting doesn't match Caroline's or Jessica's. But someone out there knows where I live. Someone is watching. Charles Harrison is dead, but his empire had many people in it. Lawyers, accountants, enforcers, people who owed their careers to a man I helped destroy. Maybe the letter is nothing. Maybe it's a prank or a mistake. Or maybe this story isn't over yet. Either way, I'm not running. I'm not hiding. I've spent too long being afraid. And I've learned that fear doesn't protect you. It just makes you smaller. If someone wants to come for me, they'll find a woman who has already survived the worst they can imagine. They'll find a mother who will do anything to protect her child. They'll find a survivor who knows exactly how to fight back. And they'll find Maya, standing right beside me, ready for whatever comes next. This is Elena Mitchell, signing off. Until next time.